Yo, what's good, y'all? Welcome back to Kid Taj, and today we are all witnesses of so much trade speculation, and it's really that time of the year. The NBA Finals are over. It's time for teams to retool themselves and give themselves a chance at next year's title, which we all know they don't have a chance at because Kevin Durant said today that he's going to come back to the Warriors. Yeah! Great news for our league. But seriously, the Cleveland Cavaliers are out here trying to make moves. We all know about LeBron GMs. Obviously, this guy is going to keep on, trying to get big names into his city to play for his team. And obviously, it makes sense. I mean, they couldn't beat the Warriors with the team they had last year, so they're going to not run it back with the same team, most likely. Which means bigger names coming to Cleveland. And so when we talk about these bigger names, we talk about guys like Paul George, like Jimmy Butler, and it's very interesting because these were names that, we all knew that Paul George and Jimmy Butler were two of the, most sought after targets, trade targets in the NBA. These are two players that so many teams want because they're valuable wing players that can play both sides of the ball, that are number one players on their team right now, superstars, and very valuable because they're in their primes. Now, the thing is, the Cleveland Cavaliers were never really a team contender for these players. They were never in the conversation. It was always Celtics, Lakers, Timberwolves, and the Sixers were recent options for Jimmy Butler. And I think Paul George, we were saying Celtics, Lakers, and now we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So in this video, we're going to be going over these two players, the chances that they don't end up in, a Pacers or Bulls jersey, respectively, next year. And, a different team, which teams are the most likely to take these two guys. Things are looking crazy right now. And I know it's just, I can be a victim of trade speculation and hype, maybe nothing's gonna happen. I really hope that something happens for multiple reasons, not just because it's entertaining. I always say that I like a trade, that's fair. I like a trade because it shakes things up, it makes things interesting. We're all excited for, this player on his new team, especially if he's a big name player. And yeah, I haven't even talked about Markelle Fultz and that number one pick yet. I, didn't make a video yesterday. I couldn't make a video yesterday, but we have more new stuff to talk about. So, maybe at the end, I'll talk about that a little bit. But in this video, we're going to be talking about Jimmy Butler and Paul George. Let's start with Paul George because this news actually surfaced earlier than the Jimmy Butler news. Paul George, the other day was literally talking about how he's going to leave Indiana. And Paul George has been making statements like this for weeks. And he's been talking about, oh man, I want to go to the Lakers. How many times has Paul George hinted at wanting to go to the Lakers? There's something about him in LA. Yeah, it's his hometown, so he wants to go there. And it's weird. It doesn't make any sense to me other than the fact that it's his hometown, because Paul George is he's hungry to win. It's if you think that Paul George wants to leave Indiana, if we get that notion that he wants to get out of there, we might as well assume that it's because that team's not good enough, he wants better help, he needs a new team to try to take down LeBron with, right? That should be our general thought when that comes to mind. But then he talks about the Lakers, and it's well, what do you want to do? You're going to be playing in your hometown, and you're just going to want money, and you're not going to win. Because, I know that Lakers team, a lot of people think that team's going to be good in a few years. I don't think any of those players really are anything. Julius Randle is really one of the only guys that I have any interest in. I don't think D'Angelo Russell's going to be anything. I don't think Brandon Ingram's going to be anything. I just don't see a lot in that core right now. And I don't think they fit together. So, the Lakers drafting Lonzo Ball, obviously that's going to shake things up. But then again, what are the Lakers giving up to get Paul George? Are they going to give up that pick to get Paul George? I would just trade all the other guys. I'd get rid of D'Angelo Russell and Brandon Ingram for Paul George, personally, if I was the Lakers. But then again, I probably wouldn't actually. Just because of the fact that, why would you want Paul George right now? Your team's not even close to being right. You need to rebuild. You need young players. Paul George is in his prime. That's the problem with Jimmy Butler on the Bulls. I'm going to get more to Jimmy Butler just because he fits this 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 problem that it's like, well, I as a Bulls fan want to get rid of Jimmy Butler as fast as I can, because it's just more years of being mediocre and more years of putting off the inevitable, which is the rebuild. We're not going to win a championship with Butler and Wade. That's just not happening. And we don't have cap room to get 3 more superstars that wouldn't want to come to our team anyway. So it doesn't make any sense. You're not going to beat the Cavs. You're not going to beat the Warriors with this team. So just get rid of everybody, get these young players and develop them into stars, or try to develop them into stars. And that's what you're going to do. Same thing with the Lakers. The Lakers, you shouldn't want Paul George, because if you get Paul George, are you going to beat the Warriors? Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere. In fact, I think if you add Paul George, if you traded Paul George to the Lakers for a few players, you'd still be trash. And you add Lonzo Ball, maybe you think, oh, well, we have Lonzo and Paul George on the same team. It's going to take a few years, and by the time that team's ready, Paul George is going to be, exiting his prime, or, I don't know. That one, it's a little bit better than the Jimmy Butler one, but I find it so hard to believe that you can get Paul George and then build a team to win a championship with what you have around him. Those guys are too young. You need them to grow together. That's what I think. So it's very hard for me to see that. When I think of Paul George, I think that he would be better off on a team that's, already solid. Again, I don't really like the Celtics or the Cavs, because that just kind of pushes that super team narrative forward. It would be more so on the Cavs if he did that. It would be better, I think, on the Celtics, because then you have some competition for LeBron in the East. You got two really good teams then. So the Celtics could play the Cavs, and we'd have maybe a 7-game series for once in the East. That would be fun. And that would make the Celtics legit. If he goes to the Cavs, then it's just not fair, because then it's just pushing the narrative of LeBron killing the East just one more. It's just emphasizing that. It's I don't want to see that over and over again. I've seen that for the last 7 years. Really think I want to see that anymore? LeBron's not going to lose a single game in the East next year if that happens. So I don't want that. Because I think Paul George on the Cavs would be actually really good. I think that he would play great there. Jimmy Butler on the Cavs, I don't know. I don't see, Jimmy Butler is really good. I even think Jimmy Butler is better than Paul George, but I don't think Jimmy Butler would be better on the Cavs than Paul George. I think that Paul George makes more sense for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, let's talk about Jimmy Butler now. Jimmy Butler, he's been in trade rumors for years, and he's always talked about how he wants to stay in Chicago, and the Bulls, they can't decide if they want to trade him. They can't decide if they, want to keep him, make him their franchise player. Either way, I think you got to get rid of him. I think you should have gotten rid of him as soon as you could have. I was very intrigued by this big 3 they put together last year at the beginning, and then slowly realized it was just not a good idea, and it didn't work. And when they got to the playoffs, it maybe could have worked for a round or two if Rondo hadn't gotten injured, but then that happened, and your team just, it self-destructed. So I think, look, what are you going to do with this team? We had some fun last year when, we were in the playoffs and won 2 games, but we weren't beating the Cavs. We weren't going to win 2 games against the Cavs. So what was the point? We weren't going to beat the Warriors. If you're not going to beat the Warriors, you got to get better or you got to get worse. And the Bulls getting better, you're not going to get good enough to be, that caliber, to be a contender. It's not going to happen. Which is why you got to trade Jimmy Butler. And I love Jimmy Butler. He's my favorite player, honestly. But you got to do what's right. You got to do what makes sense. That doesn't make any sense if you keep him. Because if you get rid of him, Dwayne Wade will probably go. Because I think he said something about how Jimmy Butler leaves, and he's going to leave too. And you don't need to bring Rondo back, because then you'd have some picks. You draft well, hopefully, and you probably get a player from that trade. So look, I'm all in favor of that. Now the options for Jimmy Butler, Timberwolves, Cavs, and Celtics. Those are basically the 3 teams that are the Lakers really aren't, I don't think, an option for Jimmy Butler, even though I'd love that, because then we'd get that number 2 pick. It's more just, the Celtics and Cavs, I think, are the biggest options for that. And the Cavs are a player in everything because of Le GM. LeBron James knows who can win, who can help him win. I think that the Cavs don't have anything to offer, which is why they're trying to bring another team into this trade, so that team can get what they want, and that team can give the Bulls what they want. The Cavs would likely give up Kevin Love, and that other team would give up a high draft pick or even 2 draft picks, and maybe if they give up only 1 draft pick, they're also giving up a player. So everybody's satisfied, hopefully. If the Cavs get Jimmy Butler, it's going to be a 3 or 4 team trade, obviously. But if the Celtics get Jimmy Butler, the way they do it, I mean, like, they already have all of the ammo. I mean, they have just an unbelievable amount of picks, and they've got a few young players. I don't think at this point you need to throw a young player in there if you're going to offer 2 or 3 of those. Like, they have the 3rd pick. They have a Lakers pick next year, I believe, maybe that's the year after that. I'm not sure exactly. They have any pick you want, and they got the Nets pick, of course. So it's like you can just hand pick what picks you want at this point. So I think the best idea would be just going that way and just giving him to Boston. I think that would actually be a lot more interesting for the league too if he went to Boston rather than Cleveland, because even though I said I think Paul George would fit better in Cleveland, if you add Jimmy Butler to the Cavs, do you really think they're going to get worse? You really think they're not going to win the East like they do I don't think that's an option there. So it's still boring if they trade Jimmy Butler to the Cavs, but if they trade him to the Celtics, then we have more of a question mark in the East. So this is what we want. And even if they trade him to the Cavs, I would be fine with that. Just because of the fact that, I'm a Bulls fan. Yeah, I would like a more interesting NBA, but the priority is to better my team. And I would love if we just, rebuild. And that's great. And I think that's a really good idea. So who's getting traded? What's the likelihood? Well, Paul George, I think, he's 90% gone. And I only say this because of what he said, not because trades are easy to make, because trades don't happen that much, and it's not a sure thing that trades are going to happen. But it would just be so weird if Paul George is back with the Pacers next year, and with all of us just knowing that he was going to be there next. It doesn't make any sense if he stays with the Pacers. He's going to be gone. They have to trade him, because if they don't trade him, they're losing him for nothing. And we all know that. Everybody in the world knows that. So you got to trade him for anything. The best deal you can get. I mean, you're not going to, come on. You got to do something before free agency next year. So I'll say he gets traded before 2018 free agency, because it wouldn't make any sense if he didn't. That wouldn't make any sense. For Jimmy Butler, I think the probability is a lot lower, but we're hearing a lot about it because a lot of teams are interested. I forgot to talk about the Timberwolves as well, but we don't really know a lot about that, but they are a contender, for Jimmy Butler. But I think that would be interesting. I would definitely be better for my entertainment. I don't think it's as likely, because the Bulls have done this the last few years. They've, toyed with the idea of trading Jimmy Butler. They've always acted like, it could definitely happen, but then they just never do it. Do you really think that the front office of the Bulls is ballsy enough to pull something off like that? I sure as hell don't. So I actually don't even think this is going to happen. I would love it to happen. But if I had to bet, if Jimmy Butler is on the team by next year, or by 2017-18 season, if you put my life on it, I would say, yeah, I guess he'll be back in a Bulls jersey, which sucks, but whatever. That's just what seems more likely to me. I hope he leaves, though. I hope they get rid of him. Again, I love Jimmy Butler, but we need to rebuild. That's gonna do it for this video. We got some very interesting trade speculation. I didn't get to Markelle Fultz in this one, so if you guys really want, I'll make another video tomorrow about him, maybe. About the draft. I'll do a mock draft before the draft, for sure. So that's going to be up before the draft, obviously. So that might be actually my next video, so I'm not even sure. That's going to do it. Like it up if you enjoy, subscribe if you're new, and I'm out. Thanks for watching, y'all. Peace.